when my sister leaned across the aisle and whispered, "You only wear that uniform because no one else would hire you." Beulah, something inside me cracked, not loudly, but deep enough to echo for years. I didn't answer her. I just looked out the window, watching the clouds break open beneath us, wondering how the same blood could carry so much contempt. She'd taken everything: my father's trust, our family's name, and now any trace of respect left between us. The seatbelt sign blinked. She smirked over her wine glass and said, "Let's see if you can handle turbulence better than responsibility." 5 minutes later, the right engine exploded. And in that deafening silence, after her laughter died, I realized something simple and final. For the first time in my life, Clarice would have to trust me, or we'd both die trying. The boarding gate was too bright for a day that felt this heavy. People shuffled around me, restless in their own lives, while I sat still with a boarding pass. I kept turning over in my hand. It wasn't the flight that made my chest tighten. It was what waited on the other end: a funeral, a family, and a silence that had lasted longer than any deployment I'd ever served through. The phone buzzed again. Clarissa's message lit up the screen like an order I didn't ask for: Flight 221, Seat 2A. "Don't wear the uniform." Mom wanted something dignified, not military. I stared at the words until the letters blurred, then glanced down at the neatly folded jacket in my carry-on. I'd already decided not to wear it, not out of shame, but out of exhaustion. There's a kind of tired that doesn't come from work or age, just years of pretending indifference doesn't hurt. When my boarding group was called, I slipped into the aisle seat beside her. She didn't greet me at first. She was too busy adjusting her silk scarf and checking her reflection in the window. Only when the flight attendant asked her to fasten her seatbelt did she glance my way. "I thought you'd just send flowers," she said, tone flat, but practiced. "I don't send people I love," I replied. Her eyes drifted to the small metal tag hanging around my neck. A faint smile touched her lips, sharp as glass. "Still wearing that? Guess some people never really leave what makes them feel important." I turned toward the window instead. The late afternoon light slid across the wing, gold and fleeting, like memory trying to stay. By the time we reached cruising altitude, Clarice was already on a call, her voice steady and detached. "Yes, I've handled the estate. No, Beulah isn't listed anywhere. We're in the clear." She didn't notice me listening, and I didn't yet know that before this plane touched the ground, nothing about our family or the meaning of the word safe would ever be the same. The hum of the engines had become background noise, steady and low, like a secret no one was supposed to hear. Clarice had her laptop open, the screen glowing cold across her face as her fingers danced over the keys. She worked the way she lived, precise, efficient, merciless. I tried not to look, tried to lose myself in the drone of the cabin, but her voice sliced through it. "Dad's will was last updated in 2019. She said casually, eyes never leaving the screen. "There's a new clause about mental stability. Anyone with a record of psychological evaluation after military service is automatically excluded." My pulse slowed. The words weren't random, they were targeted. I turned toward her, but she was already smirking as if she'd practiced this moment. "That file belongs to you, doesn't it?" she continued. "The one from Tonopah. The review. After that little training mishap?" "It was a routine evaluation," I said quietly. "Not a diagnosis." Clarice tilted her head, pretending to think. "And your attorney approved that interpretation." "Oh, wait, that's right, you don't have one." I felt the press of my nails against my palm, a quiet burn of restraint. "What did you do?" "Nothing," she said, shrugging. "Just protecting the family's interests." Mom didn't need drama. Her tone was syrupy sweet, almost kind. But every syllable carried the precision of a scalpel. She'd found a legal way to erase me. When the flight attendant passed by, Clarice lifted her glass and added with a chuckle, meant for nearby ears, "My sister used to fly fighter jets. Now she just flies her pride." The man across the aisle laughed under his breath. I didn't move. Years of service had taught me the difference between silence and surrender. I'd mastered the first long ago. When the lights dimmed for night mode, I reached into my jacket and pulled out the old photo. I always carried my father in his flight suit, grinning beside a jet older than me. He'd told me once that silence wasn't weakness, it was discipline waiting for its cue. I pressed the photo flat against my knee, and for the first time that day, I let myself breathe. A few hours later, the cabin had gone dark, except for the faint flicker of reading lights. Clarice broke the quiet, her voice as smooth as her lipstick. You know, Beulah, some of us stay and build something real. Others run to uniforms and commands because it's easier than facing responsibility. I turned just enough for her to see my eyes. I keep people alive. She smiled as if it were a punchline. And yet, here you are, seat 2B, nothing to protect but your own ego. I almost laughed, not because she was wrong, but because she'd never understand that value doesn't come with dividends. She lifted her wine again, but before the glass reached her lips, the overhead lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. A faint pop followed sharp and unnatural somewhere near the right wing. No one else reacted. But I knew that sound. The signature snap of a circuit under strain. I waited, listening for the rhythm of the engines, counting the seconds between their breaths. Something was off, small, invisible, but wrong in a way my gut refused to ignore. Clarice frowned, annoyed by the lights. Unbelievable, she muttered. First-class fares, and they can't manage a smooth ride. I looked past her, past the dim cabin, to the faint wisp of smoke rising like a warning only I could see. A quiet certainty filled me, cold and steady. Trouble was coming. And for the first time that night, I wasn't afraid of it. I unclipped the small metal tag from my neck and turned it over, tracing the inscription carved by my father's hand. In chaos, find your altitude. The words settled in my chest like a switch being flipped. Whatever was about to happen up here, I was ready to fly through it. The cabin lights flickered like a dying heartbeat. A faint metallic rattle vibrated through the floor, subtle but wrong. The kind of shift only someone who'd spent years listening to engines in combat could hear. I leaned back, trying to locate the rhythm change beneath the hum. Civilian pilots might miss it. I couldn't. Across the aisle, Clarice sighed dramatically, waving for a flight attendant. She was more annoyed than afraid. I could tell from the way she swirled her half-finished wine. When the attendant poured her another, the sound of liquid against glass mingled with the low groan of the fuselage. It was like the plane itself was holding its breath. I unlatched my seatbelt just enough to lean forward and look down the aisle. The cockpit door stayed closed. No movement, no shadow. Then a single ding echoed through the speakers. No announcement followed. 5 seconds later, a violent jolt threw everyone forward. Clarisse's wine splashed across her blouse as the cabin gasped. For a heartbeat, it was chaos, shouts, crying overhead, bins creaking open. Clarice snapped, her voice sharp and brittle. Who's flying this thing? I didn't answer. The right engine's pitch had shifted too high, then suddenly low. I'd heard that sound before in a different sky, on a day when the wrong decision meant body bags. The lead attendant stumbled down the aisle, her face pale. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay calm. Just a minor technical issue. Clarice crossed her arms. Get the captain out here. I have connections in the FAA. I cut her off before she could finish. Enough. Don't make it worse. She glared at me. This isn't one of your military drills, Beulah. Maybe not, but survival didn't care about context. Then came the voice over the intercom, strained, shaky. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing an engine issue on the right side. Please remain. A loud bang cracked through the cabin. The lights died. A burst of smoke rolled from the front, gray and acrid. Screams filled the air. Babies wailed. Somewhere glass shattered. I unclipped the chain around my neck, feeling the weight of metal between my fingers. Clarice grabbed my arm, panic slicing through her composure. Sit down! Don't you dare! If they've lost control, I can help. Help! You'll get us killed! This isn't your base. Beulah. The alarm blared, a metallic shriek that made the air itself tremble. The attendant appeared again, crying now. The captain's unresponsive. The co-pilot's trying to reach ATC. I met her eyes steady. Open the door. I can't. Regulations, if you don't, this plane goes down in 10 minutes. I've trained for this. I know what's happening. She froze. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Some tones belong to command, and fear recognizes them instinctively. The latch clicked. Inside the cockpit smelled like ozone and smoke. The captain slumped over his controls, oxygen mask tangled around his neck. The co-pilot, pale sweating, was fighting the yoke with one shaking hand. "Who are you?" he managed to ask. "Beulah Simmons, Air Force. Let me in that seat." He hesitated only long enough to nod. When I took the controls, the stick vibrated like a pulse. Clarissa's voice screamed from the cabin behind us, distant but sharp as glass. "She's not qualified. She was suspended." I ignored her. I pressed the comm switch, my voice even. "Skyreach 291 Mayday. Engine 2 fire, captain incapacitated. Request emergency vector." Static crackled, then a calm voice replied. "Roger that, 291. You're cleared for emergency descent." I gripped the controls tighter. Whatever came next, the sky was mine again. The acrid scent of burning plastic filled the cockpit. Warning lights blinked in red clusters. The co-pilot, Ed Rayner, his name stitched on his jacket, looked like a man watching his own obituary write itself. "We've lost hydraulic pressure," he said hoarsely. "I don't know how long we can hold trim." "We'll hold it," I said. "Log our airspeed and wind vector." He hesitated, staring at the gauges. "You actually know how to fly a 737. I know how to fly anything with wings and one last chance." Outside, the turbulence hit hard, shaking the frame. Through the door, Clarissa's muffled voice carried ordering the attendants to stop me threatening lawsuits, demanding control of something she couldn't begin to understand. I keyed the comm. "Skyreach 291, under manual control. Co-pilot and I are attempting glide." Ed looked at me with a mix of fear and awe. "Then you lead." The plane shuddered again, one engine dead, one coughing through the storm. I barked orders out of habit. "Autopilot off. Switch to hydraulic bypass." He followed, trembling hands obeying. I pulled back gently, feeling the aircraft's weight shift through the yoke. My arms ached, shoulders burning, but I didn't loosen my grip. "I once brought an F-15 home on half a wing," I said under my breath. "I'm not losing 300 souls because of one failed turbine." A faint sound came from behind Clarissa's voice, again louder this time, carried through a phone's mic. She was filming. "The real pilots are unconscious. A former soldier's taken over. She's hijacking the plane." I didn't look up. I spoke into the overhead. "Passengers of Skyreach 291. This is Beulah Simmons assisting your co-pilot. We are in full control and descending safely. Stay calm and seated." My voice came out steady level, the way a heartbeat should sound when everything else is falling apart. The effect rippled through the cabin silence. Then the pressure dropped. Masks fell. The roar of escaping air filled the cockpit, a sound like the ocean rising to swallow us whole. "Drop to 10,000. Don't exceed 240 knots, I ordered. "We're descending too fast," Ed shouted. "Trust me, we're not falling, we're landing early." The altimeter spun. I eased the yoke forward, then back. The vibration evened out. The plane steadied. Through the storm of alarms, I saw a flash of memory, my father's voice calm in the chaos of a desert wind tunnel. "You can't control the wind, Beulah. Only the wing." I smiled, barely feeling the weight of his words, steady my hands. For a long stretch, there was only silence. No screams, no questions, just 300 breaths holding together in the same fragile rhythm. Ed exhaled. "What now?" "We hold level," I said quietly. Eyes locked on the fading horizon. "And we hope the sky's feeling merciful tonight." Far ahead, the faint outline of Maine's coast glimmered under a thin veil of cloud. I whispered mostly to myself, "Never let them tell you can't land just because they don't believe you can." The plane kept gliding, wounded but alive just like me. Silence filled the cabin, like a living thing, 300 people suspended between fear and faith. The single engine groaned beneath us, its rhythm uneven like a dying heartbeat. Outside, black clouds stacked into walls, lightning flaring behind them like flashbulbs from another world. Ed's voice cracked beside me. "Wind shift pulling us east." "I see it." 15 degrees right. "Don't fight it, lead it." Clarissa's voice bled through the intercom. "Does anyone know what she's doing?" I switched it off. Survival doesn't need commentary. On the radar screen, a red alert blinked. Clarissa's live stream was everywhere. The headline burned through static, ex-military woman, seizes plane, 300 lives at risk. I felt the weight of it settle in my chest. If we lived, I'd face judgment long before gratitude. Then the instruments flickered out. "Backup's gone," Ed shouted. "Mechanical mode," I ordered. The yoke stiffened. No radar, no guidance, just muscle and instinct. Lightning flash throwing my reflection across the glass, sweat, focus, calm. Discipline in chaos. From behind came whispers, sobs, prayers. Ed murmured, "They've lost hope." "Good," I said. "It means they still want to live." The plane shook violently. Clarice collapsed, gasping. "Panic attack," a flight attendant cried. "Give her oxygen," I said. "Tell her I'm not letting anyone die, not even her." The cabin steadied. 10,000 feet, 210 knots, Ed reported. "Cut 7% thrust right. Hold it steady," someone whispered from behind us. "She's doing it." Minutes later, rain hammered the windshield. The fuel light glowed red. 12 minutes left, Ed warned. "We only need 10. Control refused clearance." I ignored it. Clarice screamed, "You'll kill us if we don't land. We'll die in the air." A gust slammed, the wing alarms blared. "Flaps full," I yelled. The plane shuddered, then leveled. Runway lights flickered through rain. "Too fast," Ed cried. "Trust me." Wheels hit asphalt with a scream. The fuselage shook, smoke rising. Then silence. Rain drummed softly against scorched metal. "We made it," Ed whispered. "No," I said, hands trembling on the yoke. "We were reborn." Clarice stared at me from the aisle. No arrogance, no words left, just the eyes of someone who finally understood the price of survival. The cockpit was quiet now, the kind of quiet that follows miracles. Outside fire trucks idled with their lights flashing against the scorched metal of the fuselage. Ed was talking to ground control, his voice a low hum behind me. My hands still shook, the smell of burnt wiring clinging to my skin. A knock on the door broke the silence. One of the attendants peeked in, her eyes rimmed red. "Everyone's safe, Major Simmons." "Just Beulah," I said. She nodded. Offering a tired smile, the first honest one I'd seen all night. When I stepped out into the drizzle, Clarice was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. Her designer coat was streaked with mud, her face pale beneath the floodlights. She looked at me like someone waking from a bad dream. "You actually landed it." "No." "We landed it." She didn't answer. The rain fell between us, washing away words neither of us knew how to say. A reporter pushed forward, microphone trembling in his hand. "Beulah Simmons, were you the one flying? How does it feel to save 300 lives?" I stared past him, at the ruined aircraft. "Nothing to feel proud of," I said quietly. "Only something to remember." By midnight, headlines split the nation in two. Hero pilot saves hundreds. Rogue veteran seizes control mid-flight. Both were about me. As officers handed us forms to sign, Clarice turned to whisper, "I only did what I thought was right." "So did I." I replied, meeting her eyes. But maybe we've never agreed on what right means. 2 weeks after the landing, the world had split in half. One side called me a hero, the other called me dangerous. Channel A ran footage of the burned fuselage under the headline, "Air Force Veteran Saves 300 Lives." Channel B called me a risk in uniform. And on the business network, where Clarissa's company held stock, the banner scrolled, "Simmons Family Faces Mental Health Scandal." At the FAA headquarters in D.C., the air felt colder than the skies over Maine. 3 officials sat across from me, the hum of their laptops the only sound. One finally spoke. "Why did you take control of a civilian aircraft? Because the captain was unconscious. Did you have the legal right to do so?" "No." "But I had the moral one. They didn't type that part. Morality doesn't fit inside procedure." Outside the glass doors, Clarice was performing her own version of a duty. On every screen in the lobby, her press conference played live. She said she loved me, but claimed I needed help, that I'd lost perspective, that heroism and recklessness often share the same runway. Behind her, my image looped my hands, gripping the yoke, sweat shining under red light spliced, distorted, weaponized. That evening, my lawyer Harper slid a file across the table. "She forged your 2017 evaluation," he said. "Even faked your father's signature on the will." I stared at the papers until the words blurred. She hadn't just wanted my inheritance, she'd wanted my silence. 3 days later, the Washington Ledger broke the story: Clarisse Holden, CEO of Atria Capital, accused of fraud and forgery. Within 48 hours, she was removed from her post. When the FAA released their report, one line settled everything: Major Beulah Simmons acted appropriately under emergency authority. I set the file down, breathing evenly at last. Justice isn't fast, but it always finds its altitude. A year later, the desert air in Utah shimmered with heat, the horizon bending where the sand met the sky. I stood on a small runway, surrounded by silence and sunlight. The hangar behind me bore new black letters, still bright from fresh paint: Skyreach Institute, for women in aviation and defense. I'd built it from the inheritance finally returned for every woman who'd ever been told she wasn't built to fly. One morning, after training, a young woman waited by the runway, clutching a flight manual to her chest. Her voice trembled when she spoke. "My name is Lily Holden, Clarisse's daughter." I froze for a moment. "I want to learn to fly," she said softly. "Not to prove anyone wrong, just to know that I can." I saw something familiar in her eyes, that mix of fear and quiet determination I'd once carried myself. I smiled. "Welcome to the sky." Weeks later, a small envelope arrived with no return address. Inside was my father's old watch, the one missing from the will, and a note in neat handwriting. "You landed it." No signature. I didn't need one. That evening, I placed the watch beside my logbook on the tower ledge. My father's engraving caught the light. "In chaos, find your altitude." Out on the horizon, Lily's plane lifted smoothly into the orange dusk. Revenge, I realized, isn't about fire. It's about flight rising so high they can't pull you back down. We all land somewhere. I just chose the sky. 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 I just chose the